Hi, I'm making this video to tell about my journey with PTSD and how I've actually managed to get some level of healing. The reason I'm making this video is because before I started to get better, I swore to myself that if I ever found a solution, that I would tell the world. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm also trying to start from the beginning because as I've gotten better, part of my journey has been understanding the past, and so I want to incorporate that into a new video. So and hopefully, somebody that's going through what I was can pull something out of my experience, so that they don't have to, you know, go for decades like I did. Um, so the first part I want to talk about is where I was before I started to get better. And the reason I want to define this is because before I started to get better, I didn't even know what was wrong with me. I didn't know that I had been dealing with trauma. I didn't know that I had been traumatized. I actually thought I had it good. Um, and I think that back then I had the expectation that if something had happened that it affected me that badly, that it would be obvious. And it wasn't, and I'll explain why later on in the video. But where I was I was 100% adrenaline from the time I got up in the morning to the time I basically drank myself to sleep. Um, I was 100% adrenaline, like at the absolute max. Um, like every single night, I'd probably drink about seven 16-ounce beers just to get to sleep. And I weighed like 135 pounds, and I could be up at 5 o'clock in the morning ready to go. That's how hot my body was running. My fight or flight response was stuck on all the time. Uh, for me to go in public places or go to Walmart to get food or whatever, I had to constantly resist my fight or flight response. So I would have this constant urge to escape where I was. Okay. And a lot of times, the only way I was actually able to make it in the environment that I was in was by putting headphones on myself to isolate myself from the environment. Um, my senses were dialed up to 11. And like I said, I thought it was all normal. I had nothing to compare it to. I thought that was just me. Um, Artificial fragrances. I could not stand artificial fragrances because all I could smell was the atomizing agent in the fragrance. So the way I would describe it is that it's like if you eat really spicy food, all you can taste is spice. That's what those kind of fragrances were like for me. And so I just didn't have anything with fragrance. I couldn't understand the lyrics to songs on the radio. I could pick out like words here and there, but I couldn't. I didn't have any idea what they were talking about. Um, I was super aggressive all the time. I would fight with everybody. I I was very confrontational. I couldn't even feel my own fatigue, so I could keep doing it forever. Um, and that was the way I lived, and that was normal to me. And I had no idea why. Um, I did try going to the doctor a few times. I was a bit hesitant because they usually give you like a benzodiazepine, and you become addicted in like 2 days. A couple of times I did try going. They just gave me an antihistamine. and sent me on my way. Um, so yeah, that's where I was. I had no idea why I was the way I was, but that was the way I was. Um, so I guess how I got there, with the actual trauma, was that it wasn't the trauma in it, with the bad stuff that happened in of itself that really messed with me the way it did. If it was just like something bad that happened, yes, it would be bad, but it would be bad something that happened 20 years ago. It wouldn't be still bothering me today like it does. And so the reason why it bothered me was because what was happening was either being normalized, uh, downplayed, or just ignored altogether. Um, and I can give you some examples. Um, One of the examples I had was when I was in high school. Um, I I still don't understand why I was placed in a class. It was basically in the school basement. It was for the kids that that they just kept fighting, and so this was like a holding tank for them. Like they technically weren't in trouble, but the school just couldn't let them go into normal society, and I was put there. I never got into a fight my entire time there, so I have no idea how I got there. But in this class, I was supposed to be. It was like in school suspension, except you could actually talk to other people. But the desks they had like the blinders on either side, stuff like that. And, it was so humiliating, just in that aspect. Like when I first got there, I I just sat very quietly at one of those desks and like cried because I thought, like I thought going to high school would be, going to parties and having a girlfriend and doing stuff like that, and I'm just like in the worst place ever. And like it was staffed by gym coaches, and if you disagreed with the gym coach, they would physically pin you to the ground with your arms behind your back. And this would happen multiple times a day. The only class I was allowed to go to was gym. Even then, I had to be escorted to gym. And if I tried to leave my escort, I would be pinned down in the hallway, like before. And so I would try going up to adults that I trusted, family members, whoever, and I'm like, this is what's going on. And I think because it was so extreme, it was easier for people to believe it was something else. Like either I'm describing it in a really weird way, or it's not really that bad, or I'm exaggerating, something along those lines. Like there's one family member I know of where I'm like, yeah, this is going on. What do I do? And he goes, well, everybody has everybody has problems at school. You see, so it was normalized, and what happened was that um, because I was trained to see a lot of these different things as normal, and there was some extreme stuff. Um, I can't say a lot of this stuff publicly for different reasons, but I saw children that were being electrocuted on purpose. Not at this thing. This was a little bit separate, but I'm just listing off stuff. I saw medical experiments being done on children. Um, I saw like there was some insane stuff going on. It's kind of like one of those things where you try talking about it, and it's so insane it makes you sound insane. Okay, so but like I said, I had been trained to see these things as normal, and so I'm looking at it through this really weird lens. Uh, so I understand that as normal, but for me to look back at myself, I see myself as like this very bad, disgusting, horrible person, and that was the only way I could make sense of the world I was in because I had consistently been told something different from reality. Okay. And like I said, it was either so uncomfortable people didn't want to deal with it, or in some cases, it was just so extreme, it was easier to think I was nuts. Um, and like even now, like I've had problems where I'm trying to describe like the issues that I've had and getting healing in people. It's easier for people to think that I'm autistic than it is to think that I was dealing with real stuff. Um, so that was the part that really messed me up. Was that, and it wasn't so bad as long as I had what I thought was like a way out. I'm like, okay, once I get past high school, then I'll things will get better. Or once I get into college, things will get better. Or once I actually get a job, things will get better. Okay. And I keep having all of this nonsense thrown at me. Okay. And when the panic first started was I when I first went to college, I was almost burnt out, but I wasn't burnt out quite yet. And because of some things that happened, uh, I couldn't take it anymore. And I had been taught all my life that college was everything. If you're either going to be the haves or the have-nots, and if you're not the haves, you're going to be the have-nots. So you might as well end yourself because you have absolutely no future, like that kind of stuff. And so I started with the panic, and it didn't stop. Um, I probably lived that way for oh gosh, probably like 7 8 years. Um, there was a lot of people that knew that I would that they've told me afterwards that they knew that I was dealing with trauma. I don't know why nobody said anything. I really don't. I don't know if it's because they assumed that I knew or what it was, but nobody said anything. And so, like I said, I lived with this just constant adrenaline, like I'm stuck inside a cage with some kind of predator. Um, and so, what I needed to reverse this was basically proof that what I had experienced wasn't reality. Okay, so like there was like the part of my mind that, yes, logically you can know something, but there's like another part of the mind that goes based off of just experience. And so it's like, yes, you can tell this part of the mind like this doesn't make any sense. This was just a weird fluke. This wasn't whatever. This wasn't the way you actually perceived it. But that part of my mind keeps coming back, going, prove it. Like for instance, one of the things I believed was I thought I was disgusting and horrible and everything else, and I thought I was unlovable. And it was very difficult for me to actually have a relationship with a woman when I'm just at the absolute max with adrenaline and fighting everybody and arguing with everybody and being the person that I was. And so it was like this self reinforcing thing. Um, the first time I had proof, like the first proof that I had that some of this stuff wasn't the truth, was I was in my 20s, and like about 25. Well, about 25. No, I was like 26. So I was about 26, and I there was a guy. Very long story short, and unrelated to what I was talking about with the school and what happened there. I grew up in a cult. It was a very nice cult. They weren't abusing people, but they had some like really wacky ideas. Um, and I guess put it in a nutshell, at least as far as this is concerned, what they taught me was that there was this secret hidden story within the Bible that if you knew how to read it, you would gain a power to like be able to have like wealth or anything else you wanted, and also be able to never be get sick or ever die. Like if you knew the story and you did it right, you could literally live forever. And so I at the time I was working with a guy that used to be a missionary. He was always excited about the Bible, and I'm like, okay, what's this like? Because I tried reading the Bible when I was a kid, and they had Bibles, but they were kind of almost more like props, where they weren't really meant to be read. They were more of a thing that you kept around when you're doing spiritual stuff, because it was like more serious if you had a Bible. And and not just that, because I tried reading the King James version, which is what we had, and when I was a kid, I just by the time I got past the language stuff, I just couldn't make sense of it. I just was that tired. The other thing was too was that the people around me, they could only understand what it was I was saying through the context of their own thing. So like I would have the Baptist types that sometimes they go door to door or they're giving out tracts or something because they're going soul winning, and I would end up talking to them for whatever reason, and I'm describing the religion that I'm in, and they they're like, well, do they believe in Jesus? And I'm going, okay, yeah, they believe in Jesus. And they're going, well, they're good, you're saved, yay. um it was like people, they could only see through that what those symbols that they had already been adjusted to. Like every Christmas and Easter, we would have three times the number of people come to that place, that religion I grew up in, that we would have them come in the suit and tie, because it was like they didn't really want to go to church, but they were taught that they needed to go to church, so they went the minimum number of times. So they would go Christmas and Easter, but they would show up where I was at. So it was really crazy. But um, so I read the Bible as an adult after I met that guy, and I'm going, there's no, I don't know, this sounds stupid, but I'm going, there's no secret hidden story here. There's no hidden message here. And it was like the first thing in black and white that I had that was proof that like the stuff that I was being told was nonsense. Okay, because everywhere else, even from people that should have been telling me otherwise, didn't tell me that this was nonsense. Um, and so that was in my 20s, and that shocked the hell out of me too. It shocked the hell out of me because I had some pretty good reasons for believing what I had been taught. And then the second thing, and this is where I really started to turn, was right before the virus. Uh, I had a woman that I knew who she told me that she loved me, and like I said before, I had been carrying around all of this shame and guilt and everything else that I shouldn't have been carrying around, but I did because that's what I had been indirectly taught to do. And it was like the first time I had like real proof that like, oh my gosh, I actually have value. I'm not this horrible person. I'm not this thing because like there was some stuff in my past that I don't know if I said it earlier, but there was some stuff that if I talked about, I would be dead. Okay, like I couldn't tell anybody, at least without risk taking on a whole lot of risk. So I all I could do was just keep it in. Um, because like the way again, I don't know if I said it earlier, but the way I escaped a lot of that stuff was by pretending it wasn't there. Um, it was like if I put on a happy face and just went to school like normal and pretended everything was okay, it it didn't come after me. Okay, but when this woman told me that she loved me, it was the first time I actually had that proof, and it was like, oh my gosh. So what I had been taught was a lie. What else is a lie? Okay, and I didn't know. I didn't put together exactly that logic of it. I just knew like, oh, like the adrenaline's like not as bad. The you know I'm calmer. Like something's happened. Like I'm on to something. And well, I wasn't able to talk to that woman. Stuff happened, and I lost contact. And that was right before the virus. Well, when the virus hit, I I didn't I wasn't worried about the virus in of itself at all. I was actually taunting people more, you know, about it, but I was concerned about other people's anxieties, like me kind of assimilating those anxieties. Maybe not about the virus, but just the anxiety. And so I thought, okay, maybe I should try talking to a doctor because I don't want to risk taking a benzo because of the risk of addiction. And in the past, I had tried going to a doctor and they would just give me like an antihistamine or something. Um, but I thought, okay, in this instance, maybe it's justified um, just so I don't go backwards. And so I talked to the doctor, and the doctor's like, okay, well, here's this beta blocker, the propanolol. And propanolol works by blocking the adrenaline receptors in the body. It slows down the heart and it slows down everything by blocking this adrenaline. And in hindsight, what was going on was that I was having a flashback. I would have complete or just huge rush of adrenaline. This huge rush of adrenaline. It would take me a couple of days to calm back down, but by that time I would hit another flashback. Okay. And it was just over and over and over where it would get, I hate using the word, but triggered. I would get triggered. I would have this huge adrenaline rush. Then I'm having this body response that I can't deal with. Okay. Because it just consumes me. Then it gets reset and I just keep going in this in this circle. Okay. And so when I started taking this drug, I would have the flashback, but I could stop the adrenaline. And so once I could stop the adrenaline, I could stop it from being reset, and mentally I could deal with it. It wasn't like the drug wasn't affecting me mentally. It just stopped the body response. But that was enough where once I could stop the body, I could deal with the mind stuff. And so then I really started to calm down. And it was an overnight change. But it was, like I said, it was right when the virus started, and I lost support. I basically lost all the support I had. I couldn't even get people to call, and I don't know if people just think that the virus would come after them if they used a telephone or what, but I'm really angry about that. I'm like, I need help. This is like life and death, and they're yelling at me for trying to get help while they're yelling at me because they're scared. So, but so there's about a little over a year where all I was doing was just I'd work, I'd come home, I'd get drunk. That's all I could do. And I, but over time, things did start to get better. I slowly started to process the stuff, slowly finding like bits and clues of the past so that I could kind of like, I have the fake narrative, like the story that I had of, I was this terrible person, and that's how I ended up in this weird place, weird people, and everything else. And as I understood the past more, I could kind of construct this new thing where I didn't have to see myself in such a dark way. And that's been a very slow process, and I've gotten better and better and better. So, like now, I can actually be okay without the beta blockers. Sometimes I still need them, but I can be like a couple weeks without one at all. So there's actually a real healing going on. It's not just being covered over by a drug. Um, but if I were to boil down the number one thing that I needed when I was dealing with all of that stuff was somebody to tell me the truth. Because people didn't do that. Okay? I needed somebody to tell me the truth and tell it to me directly. Not beat around the bush, not be indirect, not assume that I knew what was going on. I thought some horrific stuff was normal. Because that's all I knew. And like I said, it was easier for people to think that, oh, I'm having these problems, I'm on the spectrum, or oh, I'm I can't even go into the store. Oh, I must have an anxiety problem, or oh, blah 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 blah. It was easier for people to dismiss the truth than it was to accept the truth that actually happened. And this is with actual proof. So, and I've within the past couple of years, I've actually started to get people to acknowledge the truth, and that really, really, really does help. Because, like I said before, where you got different parts of the mind, there's that part of my mind that's still kind of in the past, going like, nah, nah. I know when I experienced it was this. I don't know where all this other stuff is going, but I know what I experienced, and it's this. And when there's actually people to validate what actually happened, to contradict that really weird set of beliefs that came from all that crap, that really does help. And it was the number one thing that I needed years ago. If hell, if somebody had actually told me that when I was a kid, I wouldn't have spent like 2 decades in hell. And I'm not trying to compare myself to other people. There's people that have been through all kinds of stuff, but this has been hell. But and the other thing I want to say is like, it's I know like before I started to get healing, I had I didn't think I was ever going to get better. Um, the only reason I didn't end it was because honestly I was just scared to. That was the only reason why. And I the reason I say that is because healing is possible. I don't know that it would come for anybody in particular, but I know that from my own experience, healing was possible. And it came from knowing the truth. Um, and it's a hard truth to get because it's, it's the people, at least in my experience, it was the people around me that didn't want to face that truth. So they would either ignore it or minimize it or downplay it or pretend it was something else. Um, one other thing I do want to include is uh, certain things you eat that make you see things like pretty colors. I have had very good success with that. But I do want to say that first of all, I made very, I spent a lot of effort to make sure I did it right. I had a doctor's prescription. I got checked out to make sure that I could physically handle it because it is a poison. I had somebody that was experienced and knew what they were doing. Okay, maybe not in healing aspect, but at least in eating it aspect. Um, I did everything I possibly could to do it right, and it has a power to actually help people. But if you you don't do it right, like you don't have to be scared of it, but if you use it foolishly, it will bite you. It is not a quick fix. This thing opens up Pandora's box. Like if you're repressing something, um, like for me, I wasn't repressing things as in like I wasn't remembering it, but I was repressing it in fact in the way that I had an emotional disconnect from it. So I could tell people what happened, and it was just like me telling somebody about how I went to McDonald's or something. So the point is like if you're gonna do that, make sure that you're prepared for stuff to come up because there's a chance that if you're repressing something, there's a good reason why you're repressing something. Okay, it's not a. I know a lot of people. They want a quick fix. They want a pill that's just going to solve the problem. And this ain't it. This is like the exact opposite of it. You take this stuff, you're going for a ride. And the ride's a lot longer than the trip. So I wanted to point that out there. Um, so yeah, hopefully somebody can actually pull something out of what I'm saying. So you won't have to go as long as I did living in hell. Just to find out, like I said, everybody already knew what the truth was all that time. But I appreciate you watching. Thank you.